Hi there, my friend. I want to thank RG175 for sponsoring this episode of the Independent School Moonshot podcast. Great schools thrive under great leadership. At RG175, we understand that finding the right match between a school and its next leader is a defining moment for both heads and trustees. With extensive experience in independent school leadership and a highly personalized approach, we guide boards through thoughtful search processes and support school leaders through key career transitions. Whether you're looking for your next leadership opportunity or seeking the ideal fit for your school, RG175 is here to help. Visit rg175.com. Again, that's rg175.com to learn more, because behind every successful school is a great leader. Hi there, my friend. I'm Peter Barron. Welcome to today's episode of the Independent School Moonshot podcast. I am really excited to have this conversation with Brendan Schneider, CEO and founder of SchneiderB Media. My good friend Brendan recently published a book, and I have to say, I felt like I was a little bit part of the process, just kind of hearing him talk through it and work the book over well over a year. And to see it actually hold it in my hand and have it in my home is really exciting. And I'm excited to share more about it today. Brendan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Peter. I'm excited to be here. And you know more than most, so this might be repetitive to you, but I'm excited to talk about the book.
Oh, no, actually, I got a whole bunch of questions that I never asked you. So, I'm excited to throw some of these at you to hear your responses. But before we do, in case folks aren't familiar with your work and your background, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and SchneiderB Media?
Sure. So I started SchneiderB Media, well, actually quite a long time ago, probably 2011. And it was really a side hustle as I was working in private schools. So worked in private schools for 28 years, about 3 years ago now, just finishing the third school year, I made the decision to go to the dark side and am a consultant and doing SchneiderB Media full time. And at SchneiderB, we do digital marketing for schools. We run the MarCom Society, and then I have marketing software called School Marketing CRM.
Awesome. And you now have a book. So,
yeah,
School Marketing the Right Way. I don't think I've ever asked you this question, but why did you decide to write it? I mean, was there a gap that you saw?
Yeah, I think there was. I usually say there are a few reasons. The first is probably working in schools my whole life. I'd be lying if I didn't say it was one of those bucket list things. Like, I want to write a book. I never thought it would happen. And I would have never thought it would have been about school marketing. So I would have lost money on that bet. But that was one of the things I wanted to write a book. The second reason is that you and I are both passionate about independent schools and boarding schools in particular, life-changing for us. We're both boarding school grads. And we, especially in your work and then work we see schools struggling. And I want schools to be around. So the motivation for the book was to kind of synthesize my thoughts and ideas and create a book that I wish was around when I had started focusing on marketing a school. So that was really the two big things that were motivation for me.
I mean, but the book came after 10, 12, 15 years of writing blog posts consistently you must have thousands of blog posts. I mean, did that give you the confidence to write it?
Yeah, such a good question. I don't know if I ever had confidence to write it. I just thought I would do it. I was writing a lot. So the blog started in 2010. And then the business, quote unquote, the incorporated business started in 2011. So for a clip there, I was writing 3 times a week.
Right. Wow.
That slowed down. And now I'm publishing once every other week. So yeah, I like writing. It helps me distill my thoughts. I've enjoyed that process. But one of the things with the book, I know some people, and if people do this, I think it's great. They take their blog post writing and just put them together or organize them in the way for a book. I didn't do that. I kind of started fresh. Some of the ideas played out through the writing on the blog, but it was just kind of a new, fresh start for me.
Okay. So set up the book. What's the premise of it?
Yeah. The premise again was I tried to walk a line between not being a workbook, all tactical, because I think those tactics change, and then not being just all strategy. like some 30,000 foot, not helpful. Like what are people going to do with that? So I tried to walk that line, and for me, it was just thinking about what are the things that I think schools need to think about in terms of marketing to enroll new students. So I don't really talk about fundraising or alumni or those kinds of maybe internal marketing things. So it's really, trying to get more inquiries and get more enrollments. But the other way I thought about the book is that it can be read from beginning to end linearly, can't say the word, or you can jump in and out based on like a topic that's really important to you right now. So you can read it either way.
Yeah. So like the idea being like, you may read it all the way through, but it's one of those books where you're going to pull it off the shelf and be like, oh, there's this chapter on, pick your topic. I need to dig deeper into that.
Yeah. That was the thought. And the other thought for me too, or the motivation was, I love to read. I know you read a lot. I've read so many business books that are too long. Like they could have been half the size or half the length. I mean,
right. So, they had to fill the page. They had to fill the pages, right?
Yeah. So I'm like, no, I don't want that. So I cut the book down. I think it's 180 some pages. It's meant to be an easy read. Cause I also know, school people don't have time. Like there's, so I wanted it to be something they could consume easily and hopefully take value from it.
Can you break down in like at a high level, what are the areas that you focus on in the book?
Yeah, really kind of soup to nuts. So I start off with thinking about who you're trying to attract. So personas, I go into things like marketing plans, budget. I have a chapter about hiring because I think schools are terrible at hiring MarCom folks. And then I get
why do you think schools are terrible at? I don't mean to interrupt. I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I just it's because I don't think the people that are doing the hiring they don't understand MarCom. They think it's, they don't understand the difference between marketing communications. And then I also think that they just focus on titles and not what the responsibilities are. Like there's a story in a book. So most of the chapters I try to start with a story, but this story was about me having a conversation with assistant head of school on the West Coast. And I say in the book, this woman was smarter than I'll ever be. She's done a great job hiring, but she was trying to hire what they called a director of strategic communications. And then I said, okay, stop. How are you going to evaluate this person? And she was going to evaluate the person based on enrollment marketing tactics. And I'm like, oh, that's a disconnect. Like, it's just, it doesn't serve anybody. Like you're going to get the wrong person who might be super talented, but can't do that enrollment marketing stuff. So that's kind of why I think people are bad at it.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, I know we're going off on a little tangent now, but I just had a chance to go on the Mindful School Marketing podcast.
Yeah.
And one of the questions they asked me, and actually I did this inside of your MarCom society as well. Like I did, maybe 12 months ago, I did a survey trying to asking people to stack rank the business competencies that I'm using to power Moonshot Lab. And marketing is one of the competencies, but it was ranked near the bottom of the list. And they asked me, why? And I thought, well, it's such a good question. Part of me wonders if it's, it's still such a relatively new discipline inside of schools.
Yeah.
I mean, how long ago was it that you literally couldn't utter the word marketing? 15 years ago? 10 years ago?
I think, I think it was a little more than that, but I think the last book, I don't know if it's on my shelf. If you're listening, I'm turning around. I have a bookcase. It was an NAIS book. I think it's 2001. I reference it in the book, and that's the last time I saw something about marketing, and that gets into a little bit like marketing was. Well, I get into the fact that marketing was a dirty word.
Yeah, no. I mean, I remember distinctly back in the back in the day, just don't use that word when you're talking to our school. They don't want to hear that word. I'm like, why? It doesn't make sense to me. But obviously things have changed. But have we refined our understanding of what marketing actually is and the responsibilities and creating the infrastructure internally so that you can do it successfully, which I guess is like where your book comes into play. And
I just think that it goes back to hiring. People get like marketing is not a dirty word anymore, which is good. But then the problem is that I think this is a generalization, but I think it holds true mostly, is that schools hire communications people And the way I loosely define it is communications is retention and marketing is recruitment, just a way to think about it. And so they hire great comms people, and they're great at that role. And then in schools, they have a ton to do. There's never something that they shouldn't be doing. So they don't have time or knowledge to go do the marketing stuff. And then sometimes that falls on the admission folk, or it just gets lost because nobody does it.
Yeah. There's too many responsibilities.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. In the book, you emphasize the importance of building a marketing system. What does that mean inside of within a school?
Yeah, it's and thanks for asking this, because I had to think about it again too, like why it's so important. And it's why our consulting packages are designed the way they are, is that I've talked to so many different school MarCom folks, and they think like, oh, if I just do Google ads, that'll be enough. And then what happens is they do the Google ads, they don't do the other stuff that you need to do. And then it doesn't work. And they're like, oh, Google ads don't work for us. And I'm like, well, you kind of need to do the whole system. You need to do the Google ads. Some people run paid traffic, Google ads, to like their homepage or their admission page. And you're like, no, it really should go to a landing page. And then you should have a conversion mechanism and drop them in some sort of automation to hopefully schedule a call or something like that. They're not doing SEO. They're not doing meta ads appropriately. They're not working on reputation management. They're not doing, so it's all the stuff. And unfortunately, I just talked about there's not enough time or resources or people to do it, but you kind of have to do it to be effective.
Well, in your mind, like, what is the perfect system, or as close to perfect as you could be?
Yeah. I mean, I think from a school standpoint, it's just having somebody whose day-to-day role is marketing. Like, you could focus on marketing every day. And I wish schools did that. And then once they do that, it's really about figuring out where you are. So doing kind of an audit, and this is hard for schools, not having sacred cows. Like, if you're doing that print ad because the board member wants you to do that print ad, are you trying to measure and figure out what that expensive cost is? And I'm not here to say that that's not working. If it's working for you, double down on that. If it's not working for you, remove it. But most schools don't even know if it's working.
It's this, you got to assess it, right? Like with anything.
Assess it and then kind of build from there. The other thing that's a struggle, and I think, I'm not sure if I talk about this in the book, so this could be a miss. This is for version 2, is marketing is about failure. And so it's really not just, blatant failure like an academic failure. It's coming up with an idea, implementing it, testing it, and seeing what works and what doesn't work. Iterate, trying again, iterate, try it again, and you're going to get there. And a lot of schools, like, we create these environments for our kids to fail and have a safe place to fail and learn and grow, but we don't create that space for adults, which is a problem, especially for marketers, because you're not going to always hit, I was going to say home runs. You're not even going to always hit singles. I mean, sometimes I strike out, but it's using that data to then iterate and trying something else.
Yeah. What is it, like that 80-20 rule? 80% of stuff you're going to do is going to not work, but 20% of that is going to is going to return the results, which means you just got to do a lot of things, right? To get that compounding effect, right?
You do. But then it's also, but there's, I think in your statement, there's measurement there. I have an idea of what's happening or not happening.
Yeah.
So that's why, again, let's just pick on print. If print's working, oh my gosh, funnel more money there. If print's not working, kill it and try something else.
What would be a good principle? Like, I'm just trying to think, if somebody's thinking, print does work for us, but how can you make it even better? What would you do to enhance a print ad to make sure that you're getting the ROI that you desire?
Yeah, for me, it's about the type of ad. So it's not necessarily a top of the funnel. Hey, look at us. We're a co-ed day. I'm just guessing, co-ed day,
whatever it is,
right? Taking content, creating an inquiry magnet and putting that, like, 27 questions to help you evaluate a school for your child. Like, put that content with a vanity URL and maybe a QR code, so that you can test. And then I'm going down the rabbit hole, but like, put a UTM code behind the QR code so I can say, look, we ran this ad that cost $1,000 and we had absolutely nobody go through the link.
Right.
Okay. It's not a 1-to-1 exactly, but I can say, maybe that's not good. Or we had 10 people come through and 7 people inquired. Oh, we need to do that more. But so content, or, obviously people are doing open houses, do ads or print ads with calls to action. Some sort of thing that you can measure, as opposed to, hey, look at us. Here's our school.
So just so that I understand it, I want to make sure I want to repeat what I heard. If you're going to do a print ad, make sure that you drive the person not to your homepage, because that you're not going to be able to measure it then, because you've got lots and lots of people hitting your homepage on a daily basis. Instead, create a separate landing page that is unique, that you can track very clearly, and have some sort of call to action where you're asking someone to do a thing, download a book, so that but provide your name, first name, last name, email address, register for a thing. Like the idea being is that you want to get them into your universe. You want that email and that name so that you can start to nurture it. Yeah. Am I getting it right?
100%. It's taking the anonymous visitor and making them a prospective family, like a known prospective family. And that could simply be, to your point, an email address.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And not weigh them down with, I know this is one of the things that you get on your soapbox is, when you see an inquiry form and you're effectively asking somebody to apply through an inquiry form. Like,
drives me.
Don't do that. Right.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's a whole nother podcast probably, but it drives me crazy the real quick snippet for that for me is only ask for information that's actionable in the inquiry process. So like if here's the one I see, what are you interested in? Arts, athletics, blah, 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 blah. But you don't use that in the inquiry process. You use that in the application process. So remove that and then ask that, like I say all the time, your application, you can ask them anything you want, as much as you want, because they're ready, and they'll give you that information.
I do think, though, there's probably another level of sophistication. Like I'm thinking of one school in particular, it does ask, 3 or 4 extracurricular things that you might be interested in, but then they segment you and they start sending you down a path with that in mind.
I love that. And that's a great example, but I would say that's actionable. So they're using that data. They're doing action on that and helping to segment. That's a beautiful strategy if you can do it.
Yeah. Hey, let's bring it back to the mechanics of writing books. Me, I love to get behind the scenes and understand the backstory of stuff. For you, what was the hardest part of pulling this thing together? And, I'm curious, as you were working your way through the process over a course of, what was it, a year? It was a long time.
It was a year. Yeah. I'm still recording the audio version of the book. Yeah.
There you go. You're not done. So first off, what was it like, behind the scenes, and what was really hard about it? And then the other question I have is, did your opinions change along the way as you're doing a lot of reflection?
Yeah, that's interesting. I knew myself that I needed accountability and guardrails. So if I was ever going to bring this home, I needed help. So I signed up with a service, with a company that, it's self-published, but I had, what did I have? It was like a positioning editor, developmental editor, copy editor, graphic designer, layout, audio engineer, I have all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I needed that. So by joining or paying for this service, I knew that was going to help me. And then the other thing is, just the writing of it. The service I used has this philosophy that you have to, once you have your outline, you just have to start writing. And I had an editor who I met with weekly, and I would have like limits, or not limits, but thresholds I'd have to meet, word count.
Yep.
And the other thing they said was you weren't allowed to edit. So it was like vomit it out. You can't edit. It's going to be ugly. Give it to your editor. And then what happens is that she was reading through everything and starting to edit. And leave questions. And then I just kept writing, so that once I got all the chapters done, then I went back, because the editing took probably longer than the writing.
Yeah.
Just based on the process. And I got into a good flow. Like any parent, we drive our kids around a lot. My daughter was in an activity that it like wasn't far from home, but it was far enough that I couldn't go and come back. So what I would do is I would go to the local public library, and unfortunately they're pretty empty right now. So I went to the public library and I just sat every day and wrote. Well, it wasn't every day. It was probably 2 or 3 times a week and wrote. So that was hugely beneficial just to get it done. That first wave done. As far as the second part of your question, like thinking about, did things change? That's a good question. I don't think anything drastically changed. It just allowed me to further sharpen what I was thinking. Because to process it and I was gonna say get on paper. I mean, I'm typing. To type that, sometimes it like hurt. like not physically, but like thinking about it, you're like, that doesn't make sense. And I would walk away from it. And so I guess it just further clarified or refined things I was thinking about, made it a little more clear in my mind so that I could share it with others.
As you were thinking about the book and you talked about outlining process, so that was, I imagine, pretty extensive. Did you go back on it? Did you do, I mean, you must have done this because you talked about how most chapters lead off with the story. But did you think first from the perspective of, okay, these are the areas that I want to cover in each chapter, or did the stories kind of drive the outline? Does it make sense?
Yeah, that is a good question. It was mostly chapters, topics I wanted to cover. And then I remember distinctly going through like the first wave and then thinking, I kind of forgot that, and like a topic, and I forgot that. So I had to write that. And then I had a couple stories. So I knew where they were going to fit. So I don't think I had any stories that necessarily drove a chapter. I just knew they would be under a topic that I found interesting.
How did you approach certain topic areas, like AI in particular? You're talking about AI all the time. You've got workshops. I mean, you did something inside of Moonshot Lab. And thank you for that. It was amazing. But when you wrote the book, I remember talking to you, you were saying, when I'm writing this thing, I know it's going to be outdated immediately. Yeah. So how did you pressure test against that?
That's where I tried to be not. So remember I was talking about that line between tactical and like 30,000 foot strategic. That was a little more up in the air, just with the ideas. Like prompting is still going to be a thing, at least for a while. and knowing how to prompt to get good outputs was important. So we talk about that. But yeah, I definitely, like, as soon as it went to print, it was out of date.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, I still think that the chapter is valuable for people that are starting to learn about AI.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting balance that you had to strike.
Yeah, like I wasn't talking about specific models because some of the models that were out are now gone and they're newer ones. So that changes all the time.
It changes daily. Yeah, daily. I'm curious. Let's fly a little higher. Maybe we're going to fly above the book here just for a second. I mean, you said you started the blog in 2010. You incorporated in 11. For the first bit of the blog, you're writing 3 times a week. You now work with lots and lots of schools. You've run work. I mean, you've touched so many different aspects of the marketing profession. When you're looking at it from your point of view, because I kind of look at you as an analyst as much as a digital media person. You're just constantly keeping tabs. In your mind, are there any trends that schools are overemphasizing right now? And are there ones that maybe they should be paying more attention to?
Yeah, this is a great question. For me, the first reaction I have is schools still overemphasize social media.
Interesting. Why so? What do you mean by that?
Meaning, I think they focus on it and are worried about doing social media over other things, which is, I'll get to what I think they underemphasize. And the reason, I'm not trying to say that social media is not important, but a couple things for me. One, and Peter, we've talked about this, organic reach on social media is awful. So like if you post to your Facebook page, generally speaking, only 1 to 2%, like the numbers I'm seeing now, 1 to 2% of the people that like your page are seeing those posts.
Right.
That's awful. And then what I do is, I mean, it's a platform that's pay to play. So now I see, and I've talked to schools, they're like, oh, we boost posts. Please don't boost posts. There's no strategy behind it. I think that money could be spent better places. So I think people overemphasize social a little too much because they underemphasize, for me, it goes back to SEO. And, you know, I remember one of the presentations I do about inbound marketing is that social media drives so little organic traffic to pages versus like SEO, which is what affects organic. Now, we were just talking about this yesterday, I think, organic is dropping because of AI and generative AI and AI as a search engine. However, I believe that the techniques for SEO will still help schools get found in AI.
Yeah.
So that's why
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, okay, you're underemphasizing it. You're not doing it really, but you could kind of get away with it now, I think, with this generative AI and all the, Perplexity and ChatGPT has search and Gemini, like you've got to start to do this stuff. But those are the two things that pop into my head.
I mean, all you need to do right now is do a search on Google. I mean, it's funny. We were talking about this yesterday. I was saying like search volume I'm guessing has dropped by 70% over what it normally was even just 2 years ago. But when I do search, all I get dominated with through Google is, I just get their AI results. I mean, and then they push the organic stuff way below.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. And I also think it's an opportunity. That's why we do it in our consulting work with schools, is that the schools that are doing really good SEO work are seeing results because so many people are not doing it.
Yeah. It's a real opportunity.
It is an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, last question as we begin to wrap up. I like to kind of end with something that's actionable. So imagine a head or enrollment leader or somebody at the school read your book, and how many chapters are there? With 14?
14.
Yeah, 14 chapters. And they're vibing with it, but they're thinking, wow, like there's a lot here. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. What's the first step? And they know they want to do something, right? They want to up their marketing game for all the reasons that you just laid out. What's the first step you recommend they take?
I thought about this. It's such a good question, especially for those folks who aren't responsible to do the day-to-day marketing work. So like if it's a head or maybe the admission director,
yeah,
my recommendation would be obviously read the book. And that's not a shameless plug. Like I do think there's value to, but read the book, but then have, like, if you're the head, have the enrollment director read the book. Look, I'd love you to buy 2, but share it. Like just, you don't have to buy it. Share the book just so that you have a common language and understanding, so that you're starting out on level playing field. And then once you've gone through it, I think the best place to start is the chapter about a marketing plan, which I won't spare you all the gory details, but like, I'm not a huge fan of these extravagant binder size marketing plans, or this huge thing in Google Docs. It's meant to be simple. And really what the idea is, kind of do an audit of what you're doing, evaluate what you're doing. If you're not measuring it, your goal this year is to measure. And it's okay to, you might not be where you need to be, but that's fine. But if you can't measure, and then look at what you've done and see what you're going to do this year and add something new this year. Start to experiment. Remember, we were talking about experimenting in marketing. And I think if you can do that, things will flow from there.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me what you're suggesting is just be reasonable and clear about your priorities.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. I said that was the last question. I have one more. If somebody is interested in picking up a copy of the book, contacting you, tell us all the things.
Yeah. The easiest way to get me is SchneiderB.com. Everything is there. The book's available on Amazon. So you can go there. It's Kindle, print, hardback, and I'm currently recording the audio version, or doing edits, I should say. And I like to play on LinkedIn. So if you're listening, I hope you'll connect with me on LinkedIn.
All right. Brendan Schneider, founder, CEO of SchneiderB Media, author of School Marketing the Right Way. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Peter. This was
Hi there, my friend. I want to thank RG175 for sponsoring this episode of the Independent School Moonshot Podcast. Great schools thrive under great leadership. At RG175, we understand that finding the right match between a school and its next leader is a defining moment for both heads and trustees. With extensive experience in independent school leadership and a highly personalized approach, we guide boards through thoughtful search processes and support school leaders through key career transitions. Whether you're looking for your next leadership opportunity or seeking the ideal fit for your school, RG175 is here to help. Visit rg175.com. Again, that's rg175.com to learn more, because behind every successful school is a great leader.